We're live.
Ooh, I'm so excited. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Spirit Sessions of View of the Light. Wherever you are, whatever you're going through, we are so blessed to be able to join together with you right now. So, like our page on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, we would be so honored if you would hit that like button, subscribe, and be a part of our beautiful, beautiful family here. We have an amazing guest today, which Bex will introduce in a moment. But first, I would like you all to join me in honoring Rhonda Elliott on the anniversary of her return around the sun. So happy
Yay.
birthday, Rhonda. Woo!
Woohoo! It's not snowing
Happy
here.
birthday.
Yay. Thank you.
You're a blessing to us, and I appreciate all your help here. And I just thank you and Steph. And welcome, Karath. So we have an amazing return guest, which is always so much fun. And I'm so excited about this. So, Bex Marie, will you take this over?
Sure. I love to. Thank you, Teresa, for that awesome intro. So, yeah, we have a return guest that Rhonda introduced us to about a year ago. And since then, I have been a huge fan of listening to his podcast. If anybody loves a good ghost story or a good supernatural story, he's the guy because he brings in the most amazing people to share their stories, their personal experiences, as well as people who write books. He has multiple podcasts that are definitely a variety of experiences and interests for people to check out. So if you like podcasts, definitely check him out as soon as you get a chance. So we'll get into that in a second. So thank you for coming on today, Jim. We're so glad to have you.
Oh, I'm so glad to be back. Thank you for asking me back. It's great to speak to you guys and your audience and really appreciate and look forward to sharing some stories today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that your story of how you got into this whole podcast, especially the paranormal podcast, is a pretty interesting one. Would you share that with us?
Well, I have been interested in the paranormal and the supernatural since I was a little kid. And I was very, very young when I used to watch a show called In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, and that carried
Yes.
throughout my life. I was also fascinated by technology and broadcasting and had gone to school to be a broadcaster and got my undergraduate and my graduate degree. Strangely enough, though, funny how life works out. What is life? I forget the saying, something about why you're making life is what happens while you're making other plans. But basically, what happened was I got my first job out of college at a radio station, but I ended up working on the business side and advertising and those kind of things. And I would write copy and things, but I wasn't on air or anything like that. And it was really, I'd done that for about a dozen years in 2005. And I said, geez, I went to school for this and I had a wife, still have a wife, two kids, mortgage, all the kind of suburban stuff. And it's like, well, I just can't quit my job and go to Paducah and try to launch a radio or TV career. But then I found out, so I'm never going to be able to follow that dream. It's just kind of the way life works out. I kind of resigned myself to it. And I found about this thing called podcasting, which was brand new at the time. And really, I think the first podcast really started in 2004. I started listening to some different people who I enjoyed who had podcasts. And really, nobody knew about it. Very, very few people. And I was listening to them, and these are traditional broadcasters, Adam Curry, Leo Laporte, some really great broadcasters. And they were doing podcasting. It's like, oh, I can't do that. And then I listened to some of the homemade ones, but I'm like, I can do that. And when I decided to do a podcast, I thought, well, it's got to be something I have legitimate interest in. And what are some of the things that I'm interested in? Well, interested in sports. I'm not going to add anything in sports. I don't know anything. Music, you can't do. It's like politics. I don't like getting into politics because, yeah, I have my beliefs, but I want to be friendly to everybody and get along with everybody. And I kept thinking, well, what is one thing every time I go into a bookstore or a library, there were still a lot of bookstores around back then in 2005. Where do I always go? What section do I always find myself in? And it was the supernatural and the paranormal. And to me, when I talk about supernatural and paranormal, I'm talking about everything from psychic gifts to ghosts to UFOs to cryptids. So a lot of people think, because my main show, the one I started in 2005, is called the Paranormal Podcast, it's just ghost hunting and those kind of things. I'm not a ghost hunter, by the way, but it's not. It's the whole range of these different topics. So anyway, I started it as kind of a lark, and I did a little bit, and I got a little bit of listenership, and then my career advanced, and I got some management jobs, and I kind of backed away for a couple of years. And I remember in 2008, I was listening to another great podcaster who still podcasts to this day, Dan Carlin. He does a great show called Hardcore History, which is an in-depth history show. And he had a sponsor, and I'm like, well, my regular job, the one where I had been bumped up to manager, it was okay. I mean, it was a good job, good benefits for the family, decent salary, but it wasn't that dream job. And yet I had all these emails coming in. Jim, when are you going to do another show? When are you going to do another show? And I said, you know what? I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I'm doing this thing over here that I have to do for my work. And I'm beating my head a little bit against the wall. And I've got this other thing over here, and people are clamoring for it. Maybe I ought to pursue that. And I told my wife, I'm going to try this for 6 months, very methodically, make sure I do a show every week. And then within 6 months, I had my first sponsor, which to me was kind of like a sign from the universe. You're on the right track. And it just grew and grew and grew. I started my Plus Club, which are extra podcasts. I started Campfire, Jim Harold's Campfire in 2009, which is my most popular show. And in 2012, I was able to take it full time, and I've been full time ever since doing this. And I'm very blessed.
That's very cool. I love how you were able to take that leap of faith, and follow what you felt really passionate about, not knowing how it was going to work out, but trusting that it would.
Yeah,
it's so true to that about, so many people now are being called to do that. And you're evidence of how that works.
Yeah, I think part of it, well, I had the support of my wife. That was crucial. That's a tough thing to say. Hey, I think I'm going to quit my job and podcast full time.
Yeah.
That took a leap of faith from her. And then kind of betting on yourself. Because the way I thought is, if it doesn't work, I can always get another job doing what I was doing. I'll be able to get something. But I thought, why not? Let's give it a shot. Now, it's been great so far. I mean, every year is a little bit better than the last. Now, of course, everybody in society is dealing with this horrible thing that's going on now, and looks like everything's going to be okay. I do worry like everybody else, but we're going to keep on keeping on. And just on that note, everybody out there watching, I wish you the best in regard to this. It's such a tough time. And thanks to all of our essential workers, grocery store workers, first responders, medical people who are doing so much to help us all.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I love that you keep an objective viewpoint when you're doing these interviews and whatnot, that you don't really support either way, that you're not holding tight to your own beliefs. You allow the people to share their stories from a completely objective standpoint. And I think that's really important for all of us, is that when we're listening to someone else tell or share a personal experience they've had, that we allow them to tell their story without trying to color it on our own, right? But I do want to ask you, how has this shifted your beliefs? How has this transformed your beliefs from when you started to now?
That's a really good question. Basically, when I started, I was a believer. Mm-hmm. And I believe that there was something to the UFO question, and there was something to ghosts and something to psychic abilities. That has not changed. Now, oddly enough, you'd be surprised, having done the show, I might look a little more critically at certain claims internally. I might not verbalize that. I might look at... I am more exacting about specific claims, but I am more convinced than ever that all of this really exists. So it almost seems like those two wouldn't be compatible, but they are. I mean, I've always said that I'm kind of a skeptical believer in that, and not skeptic like, oh, there's nothing to this. Just like I want to think about it. I don't want to blindly accept everything, but I definitely think there's something going on. Yeah. And I think that people that just say, and this is not to be judgmental towards them, because everybody has blind spots. Everybody has biases. I know I have biases. But the thing is, people say, there's nothing to this, and this is just all people's imagination. I have to disagree strongly. I've heard too many things from too many people and talked to too many people over the last 15 years. I'm absolutely convinced that we're dealing with real things. Now, for example, on the UFO question, I might have 10 different guests over the course of a typical month that deal with that question. And they're all going to come at it with a different angle. And chances are they're not all 100% correct. Because I think with a lot of this stuff, there are no experts, right? We're dealing with very kind of tough questions. But they might be right about a part of it. So my job, as I see it, is, and this is about the interviews with the authors and experts specifically I'm speaking to, is to say, okay, here are your beliefs, present them to the audience. And as long as there's nothing like, we stay away from anything like hate speech or anything like that. I've cut interviews off and never aired them when people started spewing stuff like that. I won't have that on my shows. I want to be an accepting place for everybody. But my point is that I'm going to give you the opportunity to say your piece. I may disagree with it, but I'm going to give you the opportunity, and I have the faith in the audience that they're intelligent enough to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff. Now, on the other side, the experiencers, I want to come from a place of, I believe you, and you're telling me what you experienced. I believe the vast, vast majority of people who call into Campfire to share their personal experiences are being very sincere and legitimate. And I do everything I can to provide a welcoming place where they're not going to be made fun of, and I'm not going to question their motives, where they can simply share their stories. And on more than one occasion, people say, I've never told anybody this story. And the fact that they feel comfortable enough to come to me and share it on this podcast, that's very rewarding, and I want to keep it that way. We have a big Facebook group, Jim Harold's virtual Facebook group, and that's 19,000 plus members. So, and it's free. So anybody want to check that out, you can. And we just recently had someone who posted a vulgar remark. We did an anniversary show that for the 11th anniversary of that show, they had like 2.5 hours of stories. And somebody came on there and said, well, I don't believe this person, and started spewing some vulgarities and things. And the first time I tried to be nice, and I just deleted the post, and I said, okay, just don't do that anymore. And then the post was back up in 5 minutes. I immediately kicked the person out of the group, because the group and the show is not about taking people to task or, well, did you really, no, it's not about that at all. It's about accepting place where people can share their experiences. I'll give you a quick example. Yeah. I had a gentleman call in a few years ago, and it sounded like he was probably in his 60s, I would say. And he said when he was, 12 years old or something, he swore he saw a leprechaun. Now, the reaction of most people would have been, well, you didn't see a leprechaun, come on. But to me, it's like, did he see an actual leprechaun? I don't know that he saw a leprechaun. But what he might have said, this was at night when he went to bed, he might have seen some other kind of being that was presenting itself in that way, or his mind, 12-year-old mind, might have been interpreting it that way. So I do believe he saw something. Now, the interesting part of that story was 20, 30 years later, he's talking to his brother, and he says it, and his brother says, oh, you saw him too. So, so the thing is that, I think a lot of people wouldn't have gotten past the thing that he claimed where he saw a leprechaun just to say, there's nothing to that, not to hear that affirmation that came down the road many years later. Yeah. So that's kind of my perspective and my philosophy on it.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. I know that you wanted to share some, because you usually handle mostly spooky, but I think you had a great idea about sharing some more heartwarming stories today to kind of lift the vibration and really, tune into everyone in a more positive way. So I think that'd be great if you want to share a couple.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. And the thing is, these are going to be off the top of my head. So yeah. they're pretty much mapped to the stories. One that you mentioned, and I wasn't even thinking of, but this was just recently in March on the show, was about this woman. Her husband was in the Marines, and they had befriended a younger Marine who was very, he's very gung-ho for the Marines. He loved everything Marines. That was, he would almost fight if you disparaged the U.S. Marines. Sound like he would have fought.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, basically, what happened is that it was around Christmas time, and this person had passed, and they were all broken up about it. And they said that when the event was, they had a big Christmas party, and when it was over, they went home to their apartment. And there's a long hall that goes back to their bedroom. Now their Christmas tree had fallen over, and they didn't think of it much. They simply righted the tree and replaced the ornaments. And then they went down their carpeted hall, that's important to remember, to put their daughter to bed. Now this hall is about 15 feet long with their bedroom on one side and their daughter's on the other. Now, then once you go in their bedroom, I guess you have to turn, and it's another 5 or 6 steps to bed. They put their daughter to bed without any troubles, head into the room. At the foot of the bed on the floor, sitting perfectly upright, is a single Christmas ornament. It was a white satin ball with the Marine Corps emblem on it. It was a gift from her mother-in-law, and it was the only ornament of its kind on the tree. The ornament, in order to have been there, would have had to travel down the carpeted hallway. And we know something like that doesn't roll on a carpeted hallway. Make a left turn and a right turn, and somehow end up perfectly placed at the foot of the bed. Mm-hmm. And she took that as a sign from their friend that she was still he was still around and knew. And the thing that I think is important in that story is not only did it have to take all these turns, right, it also was not just any ornament. It was the Marine ornament that meant so much to them and meant so much to him. And I do believe that our loved ones come in like unique ways. If that had been anybody else, that wouldn't have had that significance. But I think our loved ones, when they come back to us to give us signs, I think they pick things, very distinct things that will have a meaning for us. I've had that happen to myself as well. So yeah, it's a great story.
It is. Absolutely. I love that story.
Awesome story. Me too. It's been chills. I love
Yeah.
it.
Now I have one that I'd like to share that it's not quite as dramatic, but I thought it was kind of cool. Well, it's pretty dramatic. I guess this one woman who called in, this was a few weeks ago, her stepfather, I think, worked for the airlines, so they were able to, fly around the country at a discounted rate, or low. They fly on standby, but a lot of times that would mean that they couldn't get seats together. Well, when she was 10 years old, this happened, and she was with her mother. But the thing is that the seats were split. So they put the little girl in first class, and the mom sat in the back. And anyway, this young girl was very scared because it was the first time she had flown by herself. So, when she first goes there, there's nobody in the seat next to her. And then she looks up, and it's kind of this middle-aged, beautiful-looking woman. And she tells this woman she's scared, and the woman talks to her and calms her and soothes her and says, "Look out the window. It'll be very beautiful," and all this. And the little girl falls asleep, and she feels much, much better, much, much calmer, very serene. So when they're getting ready to land, she wakes up. Her mom is there, and she's confused. She's like, "Well, there was this lady here before." And she said, "Well, oh, no. The stewardess, maybe she moved seats, because the stewardess came back, and the flight attendant came back and put me in this seat because she knew you were alone." So that's odd. So the mom, after the flight's over, says, "Who was the woman who was sitting here? I really wanted to thank her because she calmed my daughter down. She was very upset." And she said, oh no, there was never a lady sitting there. I just happened to see that empty seat, and I knew you were her mom, so I came and got you. But there was never a woman there anytime at all."
That's great.
And there's more than one story like that. There's another one, and then I'll shut up for a minute and let you ask your question. But another one that reminds me of is there was a young girl. She got separated from her, I think her stepmom it was, and they were walking and so forth, and they were in a park. And she was scared, and her stepmom was going crazy trying to find her and so forth. And all of a sudden, this older lady sits down next to her, and she said that she had the bluest eyes, beautiful blue eyes that she'd ever seen. And the woman comforts her and says, "Oh, you're looking for your mom. She's not here right now. It's okay. You just sit right here. She'll show up. It won't be a problem." And she waits a few more minutes, and the lady's there. And then all of a sudden, the little girl sees her stepmom. And she runs up to her stepmom, and the stepmom's happy because she was terrified to lose this little girl, and vice versa. And she said, "Oh, Mom, I got to go back. I got to go thank the lady that's at the bench." They looked up. There was no one at the bench. And there hadn't been anybody at the bench. It was another case of maybe some kind of angelic intervention.
That's amazing. I love those stories. You know, especially we really need more and more confirmation of that, you know, we have that love and support around us all the time, that when we feel like we're alone and afraid, that we're really not. I think that's so reassuring. And, you know, I love that. Thank you for sharing those.
No, glad to do it.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess the question I really want to ask is, what story really, I guess, gave you the chills, really hit you? Like, I can't deny this at all. I absolutely, like, I really feel it. You know, I really feel that this is evidence of something beyond.
I may have told this on the last show, so if I did, forgive
That's
me.
okay.
But when people say, what is the best campfire story ever, the most, in some ways, chilling, and there's really no contest for me. It's something called the Roadhouse Saloon. Now, this isn't one of those warm and fuzzy stories, but I'll share it anyway. So this surrounded, did I tell this last time? Do you remember?
I think so, but
Okay, well, I will tell it again. I will tell it again.
It's worth, good stories are always worth telling again.
Well, this was T.I., who I've actually had the opportunity now to meet. I think since we recorded last time, and she's just as sincere and tells the same story over and over and over again. But the gist of the story was T.I. was going with a friend to see a band play. And this was, I think, up in Michigan, I think. Or no, she's in Michigan. It was in Wisconsin. And it was a rural area. It was very late at night, and they shut the place down. So it was like past 2:00 in the morning. And her friend were talking to the band because they're fellow musicians and so forth. And they got going, and they had about an hour to go to get back to the home area where they lived. And T.I. tells her friend Bob, says, you know, she gets part of the way there. She's like, I've got to go to the restroom. And he said, well, looking around, there's not much unless you want to avail yourself of one of these bushes. And she said, no, just drive fast. So, you know, like an oasis in the middle of the desert, they drive along a little bit, and they see this Roadhouse Saloon, this bar. And they're thinking, oh, we're saved. And they said, it's very odd. It would be open after 2:00 in the morning, but let's not look a gift horse in the mouth. And there was neon beer signs and cars in the lot and all these things. So anyway, Bob mentions, you know, I'm glad we came here anyway, because there's this great mural. I'm an artist, and I've heard about this great painted mural that they have, this Old West theme mural. Can't wait to see it. So they go in. And the people are kind of weird because they're kind of smiling, but they're not really talking. And T.I. goes to the restroom. Bob gets them a couple of drinks, and they're going to sit there and chat a little more and look at the mural. So they're sitting there, and they're getting ready to chat. And this young man comes up to T.I. And he's put Chubby Checkers' Let's Twist Again on the classic vinyl Wurlitzer style, you know, the bubbler type jukebox. And anyway, what happens is that he asks her to dance, and he's smiling, and he's kind of got these nasty teeth and things. And she has a cane. She walks with a cane. She shows him a cane. He said no. And she said she was really glad she had that cane so she could use that as an excuse. And they're looking more and more at this mural, and they're noticing that every individual in the mural is exhibited in the bar in real life. There's the bartender who looks like the bartender. There's these group of women who look like a group of women in the painting. There's some guys playing pool in the real place. Those guys are playing cards, but they're the same people, and they're kind of thinking that's weird. And it turns out that Bob says, well, maybe the artist, came here and these are regulars and this is like an homage to them. So anyway, they sit there a while and still people smiling, but they're not talking. And it's like, we got a kind of weird vibe here. And they keep the Chubby Checker song plays a time or two more, which is kind of ironic because it's Let's Twist Again. So anyway, they start looking at this mural and they see where there are these double saloon doors, like the old saloon doors where the guy would come in and said, I'm Bart and I'm looking for the sheriff. Those kind of double doors they had in the old Western movies, and swinging doors. And they notice something they did not notice before. They see two misty figures in the doors. And they're like, well, this is just weird. We didn't notice those before. And if you remember the old Polaroids, which actually now I guess are coming back, we got my daughter like a knockoff of it now. So now everything that's old is new again, right? But anyway, they noticed that it's these two figures are developing into the picture like you would in an old Polaroid picture. And they notice that one is shorter and one is taller. They develop a little more. They notice the woman has curly hair and T.I. has curly hair. Then they notice that the woman has boots and T.I. has boots. Well, that's a strange coincidence. And then they notice that the figure has a cane and T.I. has a cane. At that point, they realize they are developing into the picture. And it sounds like to me, I kind of envision like one of those Scooby-Doo things, exactly. Let's get out of here, Scoob. So basically they get ready to go out and the people are beckoning, come back, come back, come back. I think that's weird. They said they got on the other side of the door, closed it. Everything went totally dark, like it had never been open, and there's nobody inside. There's no music. There's nothing. There's no sound. They turn around. They look into the parking lot. There's one single car, theirs. They get out and leave. But T.I., well, she's a lot braver than I am. Let's just say that. And she tells her family, and they're kind of incredulous. And she said, no, I'm going back. So she takes, I can't remember if it's like her sister or a friend, and they go back a few nights later, but they go decidedly earlier in the evening. It's like 7:30 in the evening. T.I. goes in. She kind of scans the place. The mural is there. It's the same now. Of course, her figure and her friend's figure are not in there, but everything else is still the same. And then she knows there's a jukebox. Yeah, sure enough. She looks at the jukebox. There's no Chubby Checker. Oh, and by the way, it was that old, beautiful, classic Wurlitzer jukebox with actual records. This was a CD jukebox.
Wow.
So they go up to the bartender, who is a young woman, and she says, where's this good-looking bartender that was there the other night, and describing him. And woman says, there's no bartender here like that. The only ones that are bartenders here are me and my elderly father. And with that, T.I. kind of said, I gave up. And she left and has never been back to the Roadhouse Saloon.
Wow. That is a good story.
That one I could see on Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Hear Rob Serling. Imagine yourself driving down a
absolutely.
dark highway.
Yeah, picture if you will.
Yeah.
Really, it is a Twilight Zone worthy story. And again, I've met T.I. She's a serious person, very nice person, and I believe her. And listeners, and I think I said this on the show before, listeners have actually gone to the Roadhouse Saloon and taken pictures. It's a real place and it's still in business. I don't know about this latest situation, but as of a few months ago, it was still a going concern.
That's so interesting. That you wonder what it was. Is it like a portal they went into, or like a time warp, or
Yeah.
why
Alternate
is
universe. Yeah.
yeah, or why is the energy so different, you know? And I've heard of this kind of thing happening before in England, where they've gone into an old tavern that wasn't, you know,
Right.
tourists, and
I
find
had
it
the
wasn't really existed.
I was in England in last June and with my family, which was fantastic. I loved it. And we went into this one place. There was nothing ghostly about it, but it was from I think it was the 16th century. It had been built and had this great old fireplace and things. It's just like, just think about how much history happened in this place. And, you know, I mean, to me, the idea that you're sitting in a tavern or a pub and it was established in 1580 or something is just mind-blowing to me. I was just like, I can't believe that this is just like out of a movie. And there was nothing. I'm sure if I'd stuck around enough, maybe we would have found something ghostly, but this was just to sit down and have a drink. It was just amazing.
That would be a very cool experience in itself. Yeah. I love history. I think it's so fascinating.
Well, that's interesting because, you know, some people with the paranormal would say, well, I'm not really interested in this history stuff. And I'm like, what? That's a key part of it all. It's a key part of it all. I love history.
Absolutely. And I think energy is often stored in the stone buildings, like it's recorded like a record in a lot of. So if you have a significant event, it gets kind of, you know, filed into the stone.
I guess they call that the stone tape theory, but you've got to watch how you say that because people are thinking that you're saying stoned ape, like a Bigfoot. That's so stone tape theory, but it comes across a little better on video.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I had a friend that had their stone house unassembled, and it was somebody bought the stones and then they reassembled it. And they were happy to get rid of it because it had its ghost.
Oh, wow.
And then when the people reassembled it, they asked, was this place haunted? Because it's still there. So it was interesting. Interesting. Yeah. So was it a stoned tape ghost where it's just a place haunting, or did it just follow the stones? It's kind of interesting. Yeah.
But I absolutely love that story. That's my all-time favorite. And I've got some great... I've had some great ones come up, but haven't had one. I had one a couple weeks ago that I just did my 11th anniversary. Actually, technically the 11th. Thank you.
Yay, good for you.
11th. That's for Campfire, and that will be actually I put that show out a little earlier. It'll be April 9th. Will be the actual 11th anniversary. And what I did on that show is I put one or two stories from every year. Mm-hmm. And I just got my favorite story of this year, or one of the weirdest. We've had some really good ones this year so far, but this one was really weird, and I put it as the last story on the show. And I can't remember the name. I'll just use a different name because I'm not recalling the specific name. But this woman, she was from down south, so it was she had a bit of an accent. It was kind of fun. But she said her daddy had a record, like a tow truck. And this was 20 years ago. And I'll get the name wrong because I don't remember the name, but I'll give you, I'll put in another name and you'll know what it is. You'll understand the concept. So anyway, her dad worked, I guess, at a garage, had a tow truck, and he got a phone call. And she said it was a guy who lived in town, I guess, and said, well, this is Bobby Wayne. I rode into the ditch. Can you come get me? So he went out and pulled this guy out of the ditch of his car with his car. Then a few hours later, he called him again, asked the same thing. And he said, this is Bobby Wayne. I'm in the ditch. I ran into the ditch. Could you come pull me out? He thought, well, that's weird. Why would you run into the same ditch twice? He pulled him out. Then it happened a third time, and evidently this gentleman lost his life, which is kind of an odd confluence of events. 20 years later, this guy's at his house. And at this point, he's married and has kids and everything. And his wife isn't from the area, so she doesn't know the different names of people around there. So anyway, she gets a call, and the guy says, "Can I talk to?" I can't remember his name, Billy Jean or whatever his name was. And he said, "Well, he's out front working on a car. He's kind of busy." And she's like, "Well, I really need to talk to him." Okay. So she goes out and again said, "Somebody's on the phone and he really needs to talk to you." And he said, "Well, I'm busy now. I'll call him back. Who is it?" And he said, "Somebody says they're Bobby Wayne." And he thinks, "Oh, he's dead." So he figures somebody's pulling a prank on him. Mm-hmm. He goes to the phone, says, "I'm here now. Now, who is this?" And he goes, and it sounded real distant. He said, "This is Bobby Wah," and he kind of just drifted off. And he said that voice was identical to that man that died. He said that was his voice and he'd know it anywhere. So
I have chills.
Odd things happen.
Mm-hmm.
That one's chilling, but the one with the man with the hat, those are chilling too.
No, we don't.
Yeah, I can't even listen to them. Can't even listen.
Oh, the
to
Hat Man. No, I want to.
I can't listen to.
No.
Yeah, they're frightening.
I don't scare easy. I've watched horror movies and thrillers. I'm obsessed with ghosts since I was 8 years old. I don't scare easy, but anything with the Hat Man, I'm done. Like,
well, I think what it is because when you watch a horror movie, it's kind of like a roller coaster, right? You know that you're safe because it's just a movie. Mm-hmm. But the thought these stories are real, and this is something that could happen to anybody, it brings it to a different level. So it's kind of like theater of the mind, Sometimes what you can think up or you can dream of or you can be concerned about happening to you can be more frightening than all the blood and gore you might see in any horror movie.
Yeah. I mean, I've even, even as a teen was doing seances in cemeteries and Bloody Mary in the bathroom, and I was just like reckless. But the Hat Man is where I draw the line. Like, after hearing that podcast, I tell you, when you had him, I think somebody who wrote a book about it, I think on the Paranormal podcast, and I listened to that, and I was like, I'll be open. And he was talking about the experiences, and I'm telling you, for 3 nights after, I couldn't sleep. I was watching shadows. I was losing it.
Yeah, somebody asked what the Hat Man is, so I won't tell the story, but I'll give people the idea. There is this report that people see a shadow person. A lot of time they'll be wearing a fedora hat, and they'll typically come a lot of times at night or while you're sleeping, and it might be associated with sleep paralysis. I like to see Beck's kind of cringy. I'm sorry about that. But and the idea is when you look at this figure, it almost looks like it's cut out of the universe, that it's darker than dark. It's like a void. So and the fact that it shows up time and time again, that's pretty creepy.
Yeah, like Slenderman, like Babadook.
Yeah,
that's the Hat Man. And it's funny because I didn't put
the
those
Hat Man is saying is that the skinny man.
Yeah, it's like Slenderman, but it's more like Babadook. From the
I got to tell you, I wonder, I think about, and this is something it freaks me out. I don't even like to talk about, but I wonder about some type of shapeshifter or something like the Jinn, if you're familiar with the Jinn. When we talk about things like Black-Eyed Kids, or we talk about the Hat Man, is it the same thing representing itself in different ways? I don't know.
Good point. Now, what is it you call that?
I stole one of your guests. That's
good.
I love stealing your guests. June Lundgren, and she's coming in May, and we're going to ask her that question because
she was really good. She was really good. I really enjoyed speaking with her.
She's scary. She deals with scary stuff. Let's put it that way.
The dark side of the paranormal, if I remember correctly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was thinking about the term.
She works with protection.
Manifest things that you hear, that you hear about. What was that term that you use on the show all the time that you talk about? I can't think of it. It's some sort of entity where if you think about it, if you got it in your mind, that's it.
Tulpa.
Right. Yeah. And that's what Hat Man and all that's been labeled as, because it is something that, we're all manifestors. That's our part of it. We're all manifestors. We can manifest anything that we put our energy into, which is why I'm shutting down the Hat Man. But we are that powerful. So if we can do that for that, we can do it for good stuff too. That's the flip it around,
That's
right?
why we
That's
don't want to
right,
watch
that's right.
this stuff
why
and
we-
listen to it because I'm afraid I'm going to manifest it in my house.
You know,
So,
I think
yeah.
I love listening to
Leprechauns are one thing.
Yeah. I love listening to the campfire stories. I love the paranormal podcast and listening to, you know, authors come in and share their experience, their expertise and all of that, because there is so much more going on than we realize.
Yeah,
You know,
that
you can't deny it anymore.
you had asked earlier how my beliefs have changed. I also, another thing I would add, I think all of this is a lot more complex than I originally thought it was. I thought UFOs were aliens and, you know, this was this and that was that. And now, again, I'm more sure that there is something going on. What it is specifically, I don't know. I'm more confused about what it is. Like once you go down the rabbit hole, it's tough to think that you know anything. There's the old saying, and I can't remember who said it, but the idea is that
The more you know, the less you know.
yeah, essentially that's the idea, the
Yeah.
older I get, the less that I'm sure of, the less I know. And what is the beginning of wisdom is to realize you don't know anything.
Exactly.
So it's
Absolutely.
one of those things, I'm kind of like in firmly middle age. It's like, because I always used to ask people, do you think we'll have an answer before this lifetime? And I don't know that we will. I mean, we can certainly search, we can ask questions, we can share experiences. I think that's all good, but having a definitive answer, that's going to be hard to nail down.
Right. I agree. And I think
and that's the fun of life, right?
Yeah,
it is. I mean, if the answers were all given to you, what would be the point?
that's true.
But I think that the best disclosure that we have is person to person. If we all share our experiences and we all share our truths, we accept people's truths for what they present us with. I think that that's the best form of disclosure because we all have that common understanding of there's more. And that's all we need to know is there's more.
Yeah. I can share if you want me to. I don't want to preempt your questions, but I've got a personal story that happened to me, and I may have told on a show. I can't remember. It's one of my favorites that just shows how strangely the universe works sometimes. Would you want to hear that?
Absolutely. Thank you.
This happened to me a few years ago, well, probably 2017. I was lucky enough to be asked to be on a paranormal cruise along with Micah Hanks and the late, great Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who was an absolute favorite. She was literally on the show 20 times, I counted, over the years, and really was a friend and really just a great mentor to so many people. And we lost her last year. Very sad. But anyhow, on this cruise, one of the things that we did, we had one day where we were going to give presentations, and that's pretty intimidating when Rosemary is giving presentations and you got to follow her. It's like, oh gosh, I'm dead. But anyway, I had a little bit of a cold, so I thought I would go over to the little cafe where you could get get whatever you want to drink and get some coffee to warm up the old vocal cords for this presentation. And I walked out of the conference room, and it's right by the casino. Most except for Disney, I think all these big money maker for them are these casinos. Mm-hmm. And I saw one of the guys from our group, one of the attendees, he was playing this crane game, which it's like this claw game that goes and picks up cash. Mm-hmm. And it really struck me because my late uncle, who had passed in 2013, was like a second dad to me. I was basically just as nothing. My dad was very present, and but my uncle lived with our family, so I was like having two dads. I was doubly blessed, and I really loved my uncle very much, and I know he felt the same way. And so I thought of him because he liked to play those kind of crane games when he would come out of like a drugstore, a CVS or a Walmart or something like that, and he would be like, when my kids were with me, and we didn't get to see much, but he would like put $10 in the thing just to win one of these little 99-cent toys, just for like the sport of it. And I thought, man, he would have loved this because, he like to play the lottery and stuff. I'm like, he would love this because he loves that crane game. And then he'd be going for cash. He'd probably blow 10 or 20 bucks on it, not get a penny, but he'd love it. He'd love it. No sooner did I have that thought than a woman who I don't know, and I've never seen her before or since, walked up next to the gentleman playing the game, and she cups her hand to her mouth and she says, John, guess what my uncle's name was?
Wow.
John. Now, think about the pieces. Now, again, some people may say that was just a wild coincidence. Mm-hmm. Might have been, but I don't think so. I look at it as a meaningful coincidence, which is a synchronicity. And I think that was my uncle's way of thinking, you thought of me, just know I'm thinking of you too. That's the way that I took it. And because you have to think about, okay, the timing had to work out in such a way that I had to be in between sessions. That guy had to decide to go play the game. That woman, and I think her husband or somebody walked up to her, had to get separated from her husband, who happened to be named John, that she probably married 30 or 40 years earlier, because they looked like they were in the mid 60s. And I had to decide to go out at that. All these different pieces had to go in place for me to have that experience. And to me, that means that someone was there engineering it and pushing some buttons.
Wow.
So that's, and again, a lot of people might consider that a silly story or just insignificant. But again, that goes back to my theory that our loved ones communicate with us. And I think a lot of us sometimes want the full body apparition where they come to us and say something profound and they're glowing. But I don't know that it might work that way for some people. But I think for a lot of people, it's more kind of that seeing that special something that had that significance, like that marine ornament,
Right.
or like that claw game.
Yeah, I love that. That actually reminds me, I wanted to share a story real quick that of an experience I had, that actually your campfire stories helped affirm for me what I experienced. So I lost my cat in December,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and it was devastating. He and I were like, we were so close. He was my buddy. And one of his things was he was declawed. So when he wanted attention, and if I was in my room, he would try to scratch on my door. So you'd hear on my door. And that was usually when he wanted to be fed, because food was his thing. He was a very fat cat, looked like Garfield. And he passed, and it was like, you felt this huge hole in the house. It was just like empty space.
Sure.
And it was a few days later that I heard that noise on my door. And I was like, no, like, okay, he's here. And I was like, well, maybe I just imagined things. Maybe it was something it couldn't have been. Right. And I had a dream or two about him and stuff like that. So I was like, I knew he was still kind of visiting, but that was a little too real. The next day we heard him coming down the stairs. We heard thump, 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 because he was so heavy, his movement was very recognizable. And then I was listening later that day to the campfire, and a woman was telling a story about her dog that had passed away, and how she was hearing her dog, especially the collar and the jingling of the collar that had been set up, I think near the doorway or something, but she would hear it when he was walking, like he was still alive.
Yeah.
She would hear it jingling around the house.
I remember that.
And I was like, oh, and I was then, okay, because then you had another one right after that, and you shared that story again. I think it was at the end of the year or something. And you shared it again. I was like, okay, I get it. He's here. Okay. Like for me, it was such a huge confirmation, because there's not a lot of animal stories. And when that came up, it was just like that. And then another one right after that. And for me, it was like, all right, that was my confirmation. And I appreciate that so much. So I want to thank you for that too.
Oh, you're welcome. I thank the storyteller, but that's the thing. I don't censor the stories. I don't say you can, in fact, I say, the traditional ghost story, that's great. I'd love to hear them, but I want to hear everything else. By listening to the show, you guys, I have something I call head scratchers, which are my favorites, which are just kind of odd things that don't fit into any category. UFO stories, missing time stories. So it's ghost stories, but it's a lot more, because I do think we have these unusual bumps in the road of life that nobody can explain, but almost everybody has experienced.
Yes.
Even people who consider themselves skeptics, I think, have had a thing or two that kind of make them go,
yeah,
whoa. And some of my favorite stories, honestly, are from people who don't experience a lot of things. They might say, I've never had anything in my life happen, but this one thing did, and I know what I saw, I know what I experienced. And to me, some of those are the most powerful.
Absolutely. I love that. So how can people find you?
Well, if you have a smartphone, most of them have some kind of audio app on them. All you got to look up is my name, Jim Harold, Harold. And you can find Jim Harold's Campfire and the Paranormal Podcast. Those are my two main shows. Those are absolutely free. The most recent 13 episodes at any one time. So you never have to pay a thing to listen to those. I also do a cool show with my wife called Soulmate Stories. So please do check that out. You can find that on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Pandora, Stitcher. Basically, if it plays audio and it's something you use on your phone these days, you can find it. Or if you just like to do things a very basic kind of way, you can go to my website at jimharold.com and listen to the shows from there. Also, I have 5 campfire books, kind of the best of. You can find those at amazon.com. Just look up Jim Harold's Campfire. They'll pop up. And on Kindle, those are very inexpensive. They're only $2.99 on the Kindle. And you don't even need a Kindle to read them. You can do that on your phone. And and Google me too, because you type in Jim Harold, I definitely pop up there too. So should be able to connect. Also, I mentioned that Facebook group. People are constantly sharing their own stories on there. They just type them in. And some of those people decide to come on the show. Some don't. But that's Jim Harold's Virtual Campfire. And that's free to join. People love that group because we try to create that space where people can feel free to tell their stories without ridicule.
That's awesome. A safe space, which is perfect. And if they wanted to call in, how would they do that?
They can sign up at jimharold.com/campfire. That's jimharold.com/campfire. We just ask for a short synopsis of your story. And then what we do is once you've signed up for that, we get that submission. Then my assistant producer, Maddie, will get in touch and we'll work on scheduling a time where we can record your story. And I'd love to hear the audience stories. Again, to get involved in that, you go to jimharold.com/campfire.
Very cool. And do you have anything coming up?
Just more of the same. We've got some great shows coming up on the Paranormal podcast. Also on my Facebook pages and YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Jim Harold. I've been doing more and more live streaming these days, both myself and guests. And then I also do some things with my wife as well. And we have a concept. I can't say what it is. I think it's going to be kind of fun. We'll probably be doing that in the next week or so, because I want to do more live streaming just because I know at this time everybody's kind of shut in. So maybe a little more content and something to take people's mind off of things a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you so much for hanging out today.
Oh, thank you guys.
So much fun.
It's been great to be with you. I thank you so much. I hope everybody will check out the shows. I thank you. And I see a lot of people with comments. So thank you everybody for watching this video. We appreciate it.
Don't forget the music question.
Oh, yes. Right. So she always reminds me. So
Yes.
Here's the big question.
Oh boy.
If you had to choose a song to be the theme song of your life, what would that be?
You know, I know the answer to that. It might sound very egotistical, but My Way, because, you know, back when I started podcasting, and especially when I started full time, a lot of people are like, you know, kind of thing. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try to make this work. I was never, and you know, it goes from year to year. You never know, especially with the downturn now. I could be out looking for a job in 6 months, but I said, you know, I want to do this. I'm going to give it a try. So it was My Way. So it sounds a little egotistical, but that's the one I would pick.
I would say that you were definitely
I
built
think
for this. You have the perfect voice for podcasts, for your radio.
Well, thank
voice,
you.
know? So
Thank you very much.
I don't think you have to worry about any of that disappearing anytime soon for you.
Thank
You're
you.
pretty
No,
good.
I think this will only make your venue stronger, really, because people want to be entertained and they want to have content, and you've got both going on. So
Well, thank you.
it's
And
both
like I said,
thoughtful
it
and
makes cleaning the house so much.
distracting.
I forget that I'm cleaning when I'm listening. So
Oh,
that's
good,
why I
good.
appreciate because I hate cleaning.
Well, you all stay safe, everybody watching, and you guys all stay safe at this time. It's a scary time, but I think we'll make it through. We just have to be smart in what we do and follow the advice, and we'll make it through.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Ron,
Thank
do you
you.
have any announcements?
I have one announcement: the winner of last week's share out, and please share this out because it's you can listen to it again, or you can just share it out to people who didn't hear it. Last week's share out won with Teresa or Beck.
Yes,
Sorry,
Teresa.
with Beck.
Whoever
Was it
shared
with
last week,
Teresa?
yes, Teresa.
Yeah, one with Teresa, and that would be a light channel. So, yay. Yay. And whoever shares it out the most this week will win with me, a healing session with me. So share it out. Go to our YouTube. Please subscribe there. If you're really, getting sick of Netflix and everything, we have almost 150 shows on our YouTube channel of back episodes, free to listen to it. We call them video podcasts, so you can listen to them and clean your house. You don't have to watch. So, and there's lots of healings in there if you're looking for healings, and there's lots of meditations, and there's all sorts of entertainment, like when we have Jim or Jim on. So, it's great storytellers. So, we're so pleased that you come, and we'd love to see you again. And we'd like to make this kind of an annual thing or whatever.
Oh, that would be great. I would love that.
Yeah,
and I heard
birthday present.
sorry.
Too, so you know.
Yeah, you're my birthday present. Yeah. So you know. You had a live event, but I hear it was canceled. Has it been rescheduled, or is it sort of like on hold?
It's
like right
rescheduled.
now?
Well, it's rescheduled for August 12th. Now, of course, and everybody that had tickets, but this is down at Zanies in Nashville. Everybody that had tickets, those tickets transferred. And assuming things are better by then, I'll be there. Obviously, I think we all have to watch out and see. I think, like all of us, I don't know what's going to happen. My intention is to be there if everything's safe, but only if everything's safe for everybody. I want to make sure everybody is safe and can enjoy a good time and not have to worry about these things. So we'll see what develops. The plan is tentatively right now. We're going to move forward with it, and we'll see what happens.
Awesome. And we were chatting before you came on this show that we all did this global meditation last night at 10:45. And just because there was such a massive humanity doing it all at the same time, we raised the Schumann resonance of, it was recorded on the Schumann resonance of the earth, right?
Oh, wow.
It was
a white out of 76. Yeah, which is huge.
Way up.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. I mean, I think we need all the help we can get. I mean, it's such a difficult time. And really, the amazing thing is nobody alive, I mean, unless you're talking about someone who's over 100, has experienced anything like this. It's really historic, not in a good way, but it is really a historic and frightening occurrence.
Yeah. And, you know, and we will all get out of this together, and that's what we'll have to be. So.
Yep. Indeed.
Okay. Thank you, guys. See you next week. We love you, and take care.
Thank you.
Stay home. Wash your hands.